This is AJ Wachtel. Welcome to my podcast, Wachtelligence, where I discuss with my guests the past, present, and future of the local and national music scene with a focus on Boston and New England. Today's episode, Jon Butcher. Every Day is Special is about the incredible life and career of an extremely talented songwriter, guitarist, producer, and multimedia giant making soundtracks for TV, movies, and computer games. And Jon has also started a new movie company, Watercolors Movies. Jon just released his latest album, Special Day, and I can't wait to hear what my old friend is up to. Welcome to Wachtelligence, Jon.
Hey, Jay, thank you, man. I'm happy to be here and happy to be with you.
This is great. All right, listen, let's get going. Who are your first guitar influences?
Okay, here's the deal. When I first started being interested in playing guitar, I was watching Singing Cowboys on television in Pennsylvania and Alaska on old reruns of like Roy Rogers and all of those guys who had the horse and the guitar and got the girl at the end. I said, that's for me.
Well, you know, I know that everybody's going to talk about how your music has so many different styles, how there's so much more to your guitar playing than just notes. I mean, I hear Richie Havens, I hear Lennon in you, I hear Dylan, I hear Taj Mahal, and of course I hear Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah, it's all true. All of those things. You know what, AJ, look at it like ingredients to a dish. A good dish, a good dinner has several ingredients.
Right.
And so all of those artists that you mentioned have been really influential on me and still are.
Right. You mentioned that you spent time, you came from Alaska to Boston, and I know you lived in Alaska for a short time. Am I the only journalist who has called you a half-baked Alaskan and gotten away with it?
Wow, I certainly hope so, AJ. I hope you're the only one. No, you know what? I'm actually originally from Pennsylvania.
Yes.
And migrated with my family who worked for RCA.
Right.
And so that's how I ended up in Alaska. And from there, I came back to Pennsylvania to go to high school. And from there, of course, I went to Boston to go to college, and the rest is history.
Well, you know, you studied at Graham Junior College, and you studied broadcast journalism. Graham Junior College is in Kenmore Square, but what's broadcast journalism? Is that learning how to read a teleprompter on TV?
No, it's the guy that writes the stuff on the teleprompter. Okay. My mom wanted me to have a second career in case the music thing didn't work out. So I never really got, I'll tell you one thing though, you might not know. I went to Graham Junior College at the same time that Johnny A did.
I lived about a block away from you when I went to Boston University in Kenmore Square. I lived in Miles Standish Hall. And the big legend about Graham Jr., you lived in that building between Brookline Ave and Comm Avenue. And
That's exactly right.
There was a bank on the first floor, but I remember everybody told me, I didn't know anybody from Graham Jr., but they all told me that you guys were crazy and that there was a party there once and that a stereo was thrown out the window into Kenmore Square from like the 5th or 6th floor. Is that fact or fiction? I heard that in 1975.
I can't believe, AJ, I can't believe you know that.
That was your stereo.
Well, it wasn't just a stereo. I put my guitar amplifier in the window. So there was a time I was blasting Hendrix riffs out of my dorm window in Kenmore Square. Never got arrested though.
Hey, but did you ever buy an album from New England Music and that wasn't Warped?
No.
or do you remember that guy in Aegean Fair in Kenmore Square? It was the black pimp that wore the 3-piece pink suit with a pink hat. He would be out there from like all night standing in front of Aegean Fair. Do you remember that guy?
Dude, I can't believe you're bringing this up. Those are early memories. Yes, of course. If you spent any time in Kenmore Square, you couldn't avoid seeing that guy. I wonder whatever happened to him, man.
I was wondering the same thing. He's probably like a board of directors. And
yeah, no kidding.
He's
probably the president of Bank of America.
Or it might be board of directors, board of trustees at UMass.
Yeah.
So he was appointed, right?
Yeah,
let's talk about you and Jimi Hendrix. There's always a comparison. I know that, that's superficial on one level. You were a black guy with a white Stratocaster, but there's other things too. The band's name, Jon Butcher Axis Bold to Love. Your onstage appearance. What I want to know is, what was Jimi Hendrix to you, and why did you just go into that realm to start out with? Or how did you end up there?
Okay, that's an excellent question. Those comparisons were superficial in terms of what I was doing musically, right?
Absolutely.
Even from the beginning, my where I wanted to go had influences of Hendrix, but so did all of my pals at the same time that played guitar. We were all Johnny A. All of us were inspired by Jimmy, and so what made my situation possibly different is what you said. I was a black guy playing a Stratocaster, right? When I first did when we first signed our first record deal at Polydor, and we were talking about the band, and we were trying to figure out what to call it, we went through the litany of Jon Butcher Band. Jon Butcher Group. No. And somebody said Axis. Now, I love Axis Bold as Love, and I went along with that. It wasn't like I directed it. It was an idea that was thrown out in the room, and I signed on to it, not really understanding the implications of what that would mean to the public and how they would first perceive me. So yeah, I played a part in that perception. But as anyone who's listened to my music over the years, it kind of stops there.
Right. It's really interesting. Had Jimmy had lived, I'm sure you two would have gotten together outside the studio, in the studio. What do you think would have happened with you and Jimmy sitting down in the year 1990 and playing guitar together?
It would have been magical, at least for me. There are only a couple of guitar players, AJ, that are deified in my mind. One of them is Jeff Beck.
Right.
And the other one, electric guitar, the other one is absolutely Jimmy. Now, if I'd had a chance to sit down with him in the 90s and make music, I don't know what it would have been. I tend to think it might have been jazz inflected. I felt like Jimmy was going there in his last years. He was going in that direction. So it might have been stylistically somewhat related to jazz, but I can tell you I probably wouldn't have remembered it because I would have been floating while we were doing it.
Jon, you played the Star Spangled Banner at Fenway Park a couple of years back. Talk about that. Was that a Jimi Hendrix note-for-note version or not?
No, it really actually wasn't even close. I did my own spin, but AJ, check it out, man. Imagine being on the infield. Now imagine standing there surrounded by 42,000 people. Now, when you hear the chorus sort of builds like a storm. It doesn't happen all at once. It rolls into you like storm clouds. And I was scared knobless for the first maybe 5 seconds. And then I embraced the moment. I'm saying to myself, when will I ever have a chance to experience something like this?
It was great.
Yeah, it was fast.
I still bring it up on YouTube.
Oh yeah, and then to get to do it twice. Yeah. Oh, dude, it was wonderful. I will always love the Red Sox organization for having me on.
Okay, let's talk about Johanna Wild.
Yeah.
You know, in the mid 70s, you had Doug Sutler on bass, you had Jeff Lynne Scott on guitar, and Derek Blevins on drums.
Yeah.
You know, Doug Sutler, after that, he also joined Blind
Prince.
Pledging to Sing Eye Dogs. And
Yeah.
I have a long friendship with him, but this song Suzanne was a big hit. When was the last time you played Suzanne in concert?
It's been a long time, but let me say a couple of things about Johanna Weil. That band was how can I put it? It was my vehicle to move forward, and I absolutely loved playing with Troy Douglas Sutler III. I loved playing with Jeff Lynne Scott, and I loved playing with Derek. And those guys are wonderful, talented musicians who allowed me to bloom, because I was still in my, finding myself stage, right? Johanna Weil was a great rock band, but I was still trying to find my own voice.
Uh-huh.
And I am forever grateful to those guys allowing me to play with them and giving me the opportunity to blossom.
Then you went to Jon Butcher Axis, and that had originally Sandy Higgins fronting the band. He left to front Balloon when Charlie Farron left Balloon to front the Joe Perry project. And you and Charlie still perform together from time to time, don't you?
We did a few years ago. We had a project called FBI, which was
Right.
Farron Butcher Inc.
Right.
And we made a great record. We don't so much perform anymore. Life has a way of forging a path that you can't foresee. So
Right.
we haven't done it in quite a number of years. But I love that record. And Charlie, of course, is brilliant.
Well, the thing that I really want to talk about with JBA was you were you toured with J Geils in 1982 on their Freeze Frame tour. You were an unsigned act going on a major national tour with a national band that had just opened up for the Rolling Stones the year before. That was unheard of then, and that's unheard of today. You don't see that happening today. That's just not what.
No, you
tell
don't.
me a little bit. Tell me a little bit about that.
All right, listen to this. Chris Martin and I, but the bass player for Axis, Chris Martin and I were sitting in his East Cambridge apartment, freezing, no heat, no food, no nothing, hoping that something would happen with the band. We'd gotten a little traction at WBCN, but not any sort of breaks, and we didn't have a record deal. All of a sudden, the phone rings, and who is it but I believe the production manager from the Geils band, who invited us to open for them 3 nights at the Boston Garden around New Year's Eve. Now, you could have knocked me over with a feather, I'm telling you. I didn't have to check my schedule to see if I was available. You know what I mean? So Chris and I looked at each other, and after we picked ourselves up the floor, we did this show, the first show at the Boston Garden, and it was unbelievable. It was as far as I'm concerned, it was the beginning of Axis, really, on a national level, and certainly the beginning for me of playing giant rooms and big stages. I am forever in debt to Peter Wolf and that band, all of them, all of those guys who embraced us and gave us a stage room where they didn't have to, and lighting where they didn't have to do that, and as much time as we wanted to play. It was unbelievable. I am blessed to have had the Freeze Frame tour, my first passport.
Wolf has always downplayed it. I've talked to him a number of times about this, and he's always said to me, you were a great band at the time, and it was the right thing to do. And that's it. It was simple to him.
Well, I'll tell you what, bless him for saying that. And again, I can't emphasize this enough. AJ, those guys treated us great.
Do you know any other bands, unsigned acts, that ever went on tour, a national tour with a national act like you guys did?
Not to my knowledge.
No.
We did the 3 nights at the Boston Garden, and that turned into 72 dates around the country.
I was speaking with Derek Blevins, your drummer from Jon Butcher Axis. Well, Derek has a great story, and I want to bring it up to you and get your comment. You know, he says that you guys were touring in '82 with the Geils band, and it was your first tour, and you were in a Winnebago, and you had to relieve yourself, and for some reason you couldn't stop. So Derek said, "Why don't you just lean out the door and go while we're driving?" And it was a walk-in door, and Derek says, "I'll hang on to your belt and make sure you don't fall out." And it was dark and raining out also. And Derek says, "Well, we executed the plan. I literally was hanging onto his belt while he was leaning out the Winnebago." You're grinning. So what's that about?
AJ, what could have gone wrong? I mean, you know, fortunately, I think that the night that happened, Derek was liking me. So he didn't let go of my belt. But I mean, you know, all it would have taken was like a bump, right?
Well,
we had great times. The three of us had so much fun, and there were so many road stories.
He asked me to ask you about the famous food fight between the two rental cars all the way from Albany, New York to Hartford, Connecticut. And Derek said it was brutal, and he laughs and he goes, "I'm pretty sure my car won." Do you remember that food fight?
We were in two rented station wagons. And somebody, not me, somebody thought it was a great idea to get blueberry pies and sort of make an adventure out of driving to the next gig. Now, I don't know. Now in the rearview mirror, I feel kind of silly saying it, but at the time it seemed very important. So we had a blueberry pie war at 70 miles an hour.
Right. And, you know, I also spoke to Chris, and Chris had a great story about the Geils tour also. That I'd love to get your comment on. He says that you were traveling in an RV one early morning, sunrise, and you stopped in some town square in deepest Mississippi. And he says, "John and I stepped out of the RV and no one else is around. And John is dressed in black leather head to toe." So he said, so Chris said something like, in a love tone, "Hey man, maybe you ought to keep a low profile." And then he said, "You looked at him with your classic Jon Butcher look, a little Elvis sneer, and you dropped your leather trousers." And of course, you're commando, of course, at the time.
Well,
and
yeah.
you just stand there looking at him like, "How you like me now, motherfucker?"
Yeah.
And of course, he's looking for cover.
Yeah. Well, listen, we're impetuous, and I had never been in the Deep South before, and I don't think I had a full appreciation of what could have happened, right? We were just having fun as young guys, and I might not do that now, but at the time it seemed the important thing to do.
This nation was founded by men of many nations and backgrounds. It was founded on the principle that all men are created equal, and that the rights of every man are diminished, where the rights of one man are threatened.
I think now's a good time for me to just bring up how I first met you, and we can talk a little about that.
Yep.
You opened up for Johnny Winter in Hull at Uncle Sam's. What year was that about?
I don't know. Well, I think that was pre-Axis, wasn't it, AJ? Was that before Axis?
I think that was with Axis.
Okay, well then it must have been at the very beginning, because it had to have predated the Freeze Frame tour.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, it did.
Yeah.
But I was tight with the Winter family, and then and I saw you, and I'd heard of you, but I couldn't believe it. And the next day, you were walking in front of Johnny D's in Alston, and I went up to you. That was right around the corner from where I lived in Alston, and I said, "Hey, John, I'm AJ Wachtel, and I saw you last night open up for my friends, Johnny Winter." And I introduced myself to you, and then I started working for the Beat magazine, and I had no idea your connection to the owner of the Beat magazine, and Dave G. And Dave G. also ran Bun Ratties, and so all of a sudden it's like I was meant to happen I met you.
It's true, dude. Well,
do you remember that at all?
No, I absolutely do.
Okay.
I remember the Beat magazine days were a blast, because because Alston, Mass was like the center of the universe, with you and Michael Hill and David G. and myself, and those were times where I felt like the city, Boston, really still had the kind of importance that it did when Aerosmith launched. I still felt that same vibe. You know what I mean? It still seemed to me, I always thought that Boston was the American equivalent to London in the early days of English rock bands, and how that was a focal point. And I felt that Boston was the same way. So the Beat magazine and all of that, man, and all the people that surrounded it sort of fed that. You know what I'm saying? Meeting
it was a great
you,
music scene.
Oh yeah, and I had no idea, AJ, that we would be friends for years.
You know, bringing that up, our friendship. This is a great story. Blind Lemon Pledge and the Seeing Eye Dogs, my band, was playing at the Champ one day, and we get off, and that was basically the James Montgomery band backing me up. I walk off stage, and there you are with one other person. You're the first person I see, and you're clapping with an ear-to-ear grin. You go, "You're the white John Lee Hooker." and listen, I want to let you know that I met John Lee Hooker, and he got very annoyed whenever people went up to him and said that he was the black AJ Wachtel.
Yeah, probably. I wonder how John Lee, what he'd have to say about that right now. Dude, that was fun. You know you had a good time doing it.
That was fun. But I remember that time. You were ear to ear grin, just waiting for me to get off stage. it was great.
Blind Lemon Pledge.
But in 1983, you released the Jon Butcher Axis album, and Life Takes a Life and Ocean in Motion were the hits. In 1984, you had the video Life Takes a Life, and it was the first video by a black artist, one of the first to get airtime on MTV. And the other black artist who got the airplay on MTV was Michael Jackson. So, I mean, that's pretty impressive, John.
Yeah, we were in pretty good company. You know what? I didn't understand really the unspoken bars that existed at MTV's, the guys who made the decisions. And somehow, I don't know why this was, but somebody decided that black and rock weren't compatible. And so they had a hard time trying to figure out what to do with me.
Right.
Even with Michael Jackson, who was the king of pop, that was pretty simple, but I wasn't pop, and I certainly wasn't the king.
Right.
And it was different for me. I don't know why. I don't know who it was that made those decisions then, but there seemed to be some resistance to playing my videos. Now, we broke that resistance down. To be fair, they played the hell out of Holy War and Life Takes a Life. But the fact of the matter is there was some perceived incongruity that I didn't understand.
All right, further along the line came along the axis, and the video, The Sounds of Your Voice, was written by Tom Gimbel. And
Right.
Tom Gimbel, I know longer than I know you. He was, I know him from Berkeley when he was in the system with my good friend Gordy Friedman from Springfield, New Jersey. And I remember when the band broke up, after the system broke up, he knew that you and I were tight, and he goes, AJ, I want to join Jon Butcher Axis. Can you please speak to Jon about that? And I remember talking to you about that. And then he joined your band. And after that, he joined Aerosmith's touring band. And he's been with Foreigner for the past couple of decades. And he just retired from Foreigner about 2 weeks ago. But he wrote a song.
You talking about Sounds of Your Voice, AJ?
Yeah, The Sounds of Your Voice, right.
Yeah.
So tell me about that, and tell me about Tom Gimbel.
Tom, as I don't have to tell anybody who's seen or heard him, he's a talented guy. And not only is he talented, he's a triple threat. He plays sax, he plays keyboards, he also plays some guitar.
And he sings.
Yeah. So I'm not surprised at all that he went on to have the great career that he did. I'll tell you a quick story about Tom. We did a show in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, and it can be found at YouTube. It's one of the best shows I've ever had. We did a version of the Stevie Wonder song, Higher Ground. And check that out at YouTube, man. It's smoking. And that's Tom and I really rocking out. And I really enjoyed, when I think of him, I think of that show in Oklahoma City.
Well, when Tom thinks of you, because I talked to him, and he gave me a story or two that I'd like to get your comment on.
Sure.
I smiled about this, and I'm sure you will too. He said that you guys had a road manager named Bruce, and sometimes if you wandered off, he'd be looking for you with steam coming out of his ears.
Yes.
I often see us whenever we had wandered off to, and he would say, hey, man, Bruce is looking for you big time. And that's when we knew we were in trouble. And I don't know if that's funny or not, but it makes me laugh every time I think about it.
Bruce Amdur was our tour manager at the time. And he was a little guy with a hot head, right? He was the guy, he was the guy that you didn't want to disappoint being late for stage call or the car to take you to the venue. So he was constantly, now I'll tell the story this way. He was constantly looking for Tom, not me. Tom was the guy who no one could find, and he's hiding in his room, and he's under the building, and he's on the roof, and he's hanging out with Paul Simon. Whatever he was doing, he was the guy that was late for a car call. So I'll turn that around.
He also has a great story about the late Rob Jeffries, who joined your band for bass for a short time. He was in the Boston Brats, and he also was the bartender at Bunratty's. But he goes, you guys were on the set making the video for Goodbye Saving Grace, and the video shoots are mostly, time consuming. You're waiting for hours and hours, and Rob had a hangover, so he decided to run to the package store real quick and get some beer. So just after he left, the director comes in and goes, everybody on the set now. The light is perfect, and the sun is setting, and it's coming through the windows. So let's go upstairs. And we go upstairs, and he goes, where's Rob?
Yeah.
And the looks on everybody's faces when we told them he went to run an errand was priceless. They wanted to know what errand he went to, and I'm sure we tried to cover up and said, we didn't know. Maybe he was going to a pharmacy or something. So Tom goes, we shot the scene without him, and then he showed up with a half a case of beer in his hand. The whole reason he was there was to be in the video with us, and he leaves the set of the video to go get beer.
Yeah.
We shoot the scene without him, and we are wrapping up the shoot, and he shows up with a half a case of beer. Tom goes, that's rock and roll. And he goes, this was in L.A., of course, and he was only in the band for about a week, but we partied for about 5 years worth in that week. The night before the video shoot was legendary. That's why he was so hungover. Why was that night legendary, John?
Isn't there always one guy? Isn't there always one? just a minute. You've been around musicians and bands forever, right? Isn't there always one guy where you turn around and go, where's that guy? And that guy's always on a beer errand, buddy. He's always the guy on the beer errand. Always. That was God bless Rob Jeffries.
Well, Tom continues, he goes, when JBA was opening for Aerosmith at the Providence Civic Center in Rhode Island, he goes, I was there to play 3 or 4 songs, and Chris Martin had a new leather outfit. I believe he was trying on for the first time. And he goes, he looked fantastic in red. And what no one knew was because the leather was so hot to wear under the lights, Chris almost overheated and passed out. And he goes, you might want to check with the guys. I hope I have the story right, but that's somewhere along the lines of what I remember. I'm sure there are pictures of the outfit. It was awesome. Okay, John, what's the story about that?
I wish I could show. I have pictures of that. I wish I could show you pictures right now of poor Chris Martin in his red leather outfit. Now, in fairness, Chris looked dashing. You know what I mean? He was the picture of rock and roll health. Well, more or less. And yeah, I remember that. We learned a lot of fashion lessons the hard way, like that. Fashion emergencies, brother.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Don't make me say more.
Hey, listen, I know that. Listen, you and me are going to have to re-edit this. We're keeping all the sex and drug stories out of this, all right?
Okay.
All right, let's talk about the Barefoot Servants. In 1994, you spent most of the 90s in various multimedia projects, but you also had a band with Leland Sklar on bass. What's the story about the Barefoot Servants?
I got a chance to play with a living legend. Mm-hmm. That legend, Leland Sklar, who has graced so many records, they're almost unable. Once we were at the studio, and Lee showed me a list of all of the records he's been on, and I'm telling you, the list was 2 feet long.
Absolutely.
Everybody you've ever heard of, from the Eagles to whomever, he's worked with. And now, add to that Lee is the nicest guy you'll ever meet, grounded, down to earth, not someone impressed with himself, and he certainly could be, but he's not.
He's even a Facebook friend of mine. That proves the point.
He's a good guy, and one of my best and long-standing friends. I'm lucky to have a friend like him, and I still talk to him all the time.
Well, tell me about Barefoot Servants.
Barefoot Servants was amazing, dude. We got together. It was me, Ray Brinker on drums, Lee on bass, and a guy named Ben Schultz on guitar, slide guitar to be specific. And we got together, had an idea that we were going to do sort of a fusion of blues and rock, but we didn't know how it was going to shake out. We went, this was in LA. We went to Ben's home studio. He had a beautiful home studio built in his basement. We went down in his studio for the first time, strapped on guitars, and from the first note, literally from the first note, we knew we had something. The Barefoot Servants was a great experience for me to be in a band that didn't have my name at the top.
Right.
I was happy for that, man. I kind of melted into that personality, the band thing, and it was comfortable for me, and I felt like all of us were lifting the same weight.
Well, you brought up blues. In the mid-'90s, around that time, you had 2 solo blues albums, Positively the Blues
Electric Factory.
And Electric Factory.
Yeah.
It was Positively the Blues. I get the Dylan reference, Positively 4th Street, and Electric Factory, Electric Ladyland. Tell me about those 2 blues CDs.
I love those records. I really am so happy I made them. At the time,
they're great albums. They both are.
They're really good. And I did both of them with my ex bandmate, Ben Schultz. He and I decided that we would collaborate to do those 2 albums, Positively and Electric Factory. They're still out there, and I recommend anybody check them out. Fearsome guitar playing, great production values. I'm proud of those records, and I encourage anyone who's a fan of mine to check out both Positively the Blues and Electric Factory.
You know, that's a good thing. Why don't you tell us how we can keep in touch with you online to know, because we're going to talk about your latest release soon, but if anybody wants to know about the new album, past albums, what you're up to, where do they go?
That's an easy one. They can go to, first of all, my website, jonbutcher.com. They can go to all of my social media, at Jon Butcher at Twitter and Instagram. And of course, my Facebook page is easy to find. And I keep up with that stuff. I never thought that I would. I never imagined that I'd be here doing the 21st century thing and having to pay attention to social media. But you do. You have to, because growing and adjusting and moving down the road is important, and that's how we do it. So Twitter, at Jon Butcher, Instagram, at Jon Butcher, Facebook, my page is called Jon Butcher, and my website, jonbutcher.com.
Let's talk about your multimedia projects. You created your own production company. You built a state-of-the-art recording studio, electric factory located in San Fernando Hills in California. Why there and not Boston? Was it the weather?
No, I was living there at the time, AJ.
Mm-hmm.
After Axis broke up, I moved to California. I didn't know I was going to be there for 18 years. I had no idea, honestly. I went there to say, well, I'll come out here to make my second record for Capitol. And I ended up staying at the producer's house. And then I did a movie soundtrack, and Iron Eagle. So I stayed a little longer. And then I did another project for Fox Television. And before you know it, time had passed. 18 years went by. And so that's why I was there. I'd gone out there after Axis to try and reinvent myself. And I did. I got into movies, and I got into television.
And that's great. You did a lot of TV work, you did films, and you've even done stuff for computer games. You've scored music for computer games. You've been on the HBO series Deadwood, A&E channel, The Life and Times of Bill Cody, UPN's The Hugleys, Ugly Betty on ABC, Star Trek's The Next Generation. Which one is your music on Star Trek The Next Generation?
I dabbled in, now I'm primarily a guitar player, right? So there's no wailing guitar on Star Trek. There just isn't. So I dabbled into sort of computer generated music at the time. This was years ago, but I dabbled into that, and a buddy and I made the theme song for, I think, the second series of Star Trek on television, not the movie. And it was a great experience working in television. The Hugleys, we wrote the theme for that too. So I was lucky to get this work, and that's what kept me there. But I think, I don't know, I'll have to send you the Star Trek thing I won. I think you'll dig it, but it doesn't sound like me.
I'm sure. But you also did NBC's My Name is Earl, and you did music for Hendrix the Movie. What computer games can we hear you on? There was
a computer game of The Sopranos, and I'm not sure what was the game platform thing. It was PlayStation. I have one of those somewhere around. Of course, the PlayStation is different. You can't play it anymore unless you have an old machine. But that was a gas. It paid great. It was easy. I did it at home in maybe a night and a half. Easy payday, fun thing, and who can say that they did video games? So there you go.
Jon, you broke the rules back then, and you're still pushing the boundaries today. Hey,
willingness to reinvent yourself. I can't say that enough. I have been willing to reinvent me from Johanna Wild to now. And any musician who does that is going to success will find them. And any musician who doesn't, sooner or later the bus will pass them by. Reinvention is the key to longevity, in my opinion.
Jon, can I get you to play a little music for us?
Yeah, let's see here. Well, I'm a voodoo child. Lord knows I'm a voodoo child. Ha! Woo! Hey, woo. That's by Jimi Hendrix.
Play something of yours. You have a new album coming out.
I'm going to heaven on a railroad line, and I'm on my way. Do-do-do-do. I'm going to heaven on a railroad line, and I'm on my way. Yes, I am. No more heartache, no more tears. I hear that whistle blowing, and it's loud and clear. I'm going to heaven on a railroad line, and I'm on my way. I'm on my way. I'm going to heaven on a railroad line. I said now, yeah. Do you, do you, do you, do you, do you, do you, do?
Woo! Thank you for the private concert, John. That
Yeah,
was
man.
great. What was the song's name?
That was Railroad Line. That's actually one of my old ones. My
Okay.
new record is called Special Day.
Right, I
I'm
want to
really
talk to you
proud of
about
it.
that.
It's the best record I've ever done, and I'm really proud of it. I'm hoping that people will find it.
You have 10 new songs on it. It's your first release in 3 years. And, you know, you call your songs small stories about big events. What do you mean by that?
As a writer, I learned something. I learned that the things that we have in common are everyday things. Every day not having enough money, or the everyday event of having to put gas in your car or find food, or deal with prejudice, not racism, but prejudice. And those are things that are everyday life things, but they're big things. They're big events in our lives, because those are the things that shape us. So the music on Special Day are, at first glance, they're small stories, but they're talking about the big things that affect us in a society.
You're going to be going on tour pretty soon for that, aren't you?
I definitely am. We started out, we did a couple of warm-up dates so far this year, and I just signed with a new booking agency, and so we're making plans right now to begin touring at the end of 2021 into 2022.
I can't wait. You know, I spoke to your current drummer, John Anthony, and he told me a great story, and I'd like to share it with you. He says he remembers you were playing on the North Shore, and we were about to play an encore, and John counted out a quick 4 and blasted into a song we had never done before, Rocky Mountain Way. And he goes, thank heavens I knew it. It was like, whoa, that was crazy. I'm sure glad he had faith in me. Always an adventure, and he's a great player and brother. Dude, what's Jon Anthony like?
Jon Anthony is one of the best drummers walking the earth today. That guy he and I have made more great music, more great records. And here's the beauty of Jon. I surprise my guys oftentimes at a show. I do. I'll think of something and I'll say, TV, and just go with it, you know, and they have learned that that's the way I roll. Jon used to be like completely, you know, flustered, flummoxed, you know, what is he doing? But now he realizes that that's where the magic lives.
Yes.
It lives in those impromptu surprise moments where you're barely holding on and playing at the top of your game. I love those moments. I love them, and I love Jon Anthony.
What's the difference between Derek Blevins and Jon Anthony behind the kit in your band?
That's an excellent question. Derek was the first drummer I played with who understood where to put the backbeat and how to play a big show and project drums. I think Jon Anthony was the how can I put it, is kind of like the next generation of Derek, in that he has probably more technical ability to cover more styles, but he also understands the importance of where to put the backbeat and how to project. It's not a simple case of hitting a drum. You project music, and that's how people feel it, man. You project it to them, and that's how they receive it.
Jon, you also have a new movie company, Watercolors Movies. What's behind the name and what's behind the company?
Thank you for asking me that. I have been making my own videos now for several years. It was something that I got into and enjoyed that part of the creative process. And during the pandemic, COVID forced vacation, I took that opportunity to expand Watercolors into a company that would take clients. So instead of me doing my own stuff, I began to accept clients who dug my video work and imagery. I believe that all of us in this age need video to make your message successful. It's very difficult now for an artist, say, or a painter, or a musician, a writer, a composer, to reach people without using the medium of video. I think that's important, and we are able to do it at a price point where guys like me can afford it. When I made my MTV videos, they cost 5 figures,
right.
Thousands of dollars, really expensive. And I was thinking to myself, I can't afford that. Right. I still need to make videos, so that's when I started making my own. And I got the hang of it. I enjoy doing it, and Watercolors is available for people who need to get their message out and don't have those kind of corporate big pockets.
Well, you make mini movies for artists, musicians, and painters who have a story to tell, but don't have, like you said, the corporate deep pockets to make it happen. And That's right. Make it happen. What about the name Watercolors?
I don't know. It seemed cool. And it's sort of, I like the whole idea of it being liquid. We, as a company, are really focused on the message of helping people get their message out. But me as an artist, I really like fluidity. Like I was telling you before, I'm into reinvention. I reinvent myself all the time. And so Watercolors is a company that kind of reflects that mindset. It's fluid. We're able to move and shake without ruffling any feathers. And I really enjoy it.
All right. What's the difference between a band's video and your mini movies?
If you take a look at one on YouTube, you'll see there's always a sub-story. So it's not just about the guy playing the guitar and singing the song. We've all seen that. Right. And it's cool as far as it goes, but I like to include a sub-story or subtext taken from the lyrics, which allows another sort of view, another angle to look at what you're listening to. Cool. You know what I mean? So it's not just on the one level of the guy playing the song into the camera, but there's a sub-story going on.
Jon, you're a busy guy. You're still recording cameos in other people's albums. I know you just recently did a song on Tom Guerra's album. Talk about that.
Oh, man, Tom is great. Tom Guerra is a wonderful player and writer. He and I got to be friends, and he's one of the guys I did a Watercolors video for. He asked me to guest on one of his records, and I thought that went really well. And when he was working on his next record, he called me up and said, listen, let's talk video. And lo and behold, I made a couple of videos for him too. Okay,
Jon, it's the end of my podcast. I'm going to ask you the question that I ask everybody to.
Yes, sir.
To end the Wachtelligence show. What was the first concert you were ever at that you ever attended?
Okay, here it is. You ready?
Yeah.
I'm 15 years old, too young to get into this venue in Philadelphia to go see Jimi Hendrix. I wanted to see Jimi Hendrix so bad my teeth hurt. So here's what I did. I went down early in the afternoon to watch the sound check, and I almost passed out. I almost flipped out. I almost jumped off a ledge. That's how moved I was by seeing Jimmy in a non-show way. I heard him play Spanish Castle Magic, and I have never been the same since. If you look at me now, I'm still shaking and quivering and freaking out because I saw Jimmy do the sound check in Philadelphia. That was my first concert, and it's the best one I've ever seen.
I knew Noel Redding and Buddy Miles fairly well, and I asked Noel about Jimi Hendrix's Experience, if they ever rehearsed. And he said, no, we never rehearsed. And I said to Buddy Miles once, I said, Buddy, Noel said that his band never rehearsed. He goes, oh, we rehearsed, Band of Gypsies. We rehearsed all the times. What do you think about that?
I think they did. I can't believe you brought this up. I was just listening to the Band of Gypsies CD collection of those shows at the Fillmore, right? And I'm listening to the record, and there's a point where Jimmy says, this is all the songs we know. We worked them out in rehearsal. I hope you like them. And so they were rehearsing. That's still one of my favorite records, Band of Gypsies. And I would have been given anything to be present for those Fillmore shows.
Jon, thank you so much for being on Wachtelligence. It was great to have you on and to see you again and to hear about all the great things you're up to today.
The time went by fast, brother. It went by in the blink of an eye. We only did 10 minutes, right? AJ, thank you so much, man, for having me. It's so good to talk to you again. We are brothers and always will be. And I'm so thankful to you and grateful to you, brother. Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Wachtelligence. You can connect with me on Facebook at Wachtelligence. Thanks to my producers, my son Harrison and David Schwartz, and Harvey Brooks for my theme song. Don't forget to subscribe.
I don't care what you think of me. Don't need no jailer to set me free. Don't want strangers filling up my cup. Don't need no advisor to show me down from up.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Wachtelligence. You can connect with me on Facebook at Wachtelligence. Thanks to my producers, my son Harrison and David Schwartz, and Harvey Brooks for my theme song. Don't forget to subscribe.
I don't care what you think of me. Don't need no jailer to set me free. Don't want strangers filling up my cup. Don't need no advisor to show me down from up.